Aloha everyone, Sloane here. I'm so excited that you're with us on this Tuesday training. We are filming live, coming to you from the Hive in Kailua, our brand new collaborative workspace, and I'm just really excited that you're here. So, I'm also very excited that you're here because today we have with us author Clifford and Words, who is the author of the Forgiveness Handbook, a simple guide to freedom of the mind and heart. Last night we had an amazing book signing here with Cliff, and he got to talk to us a little bit about what freedom means and why freedom, and a lot of the misconceptions that we have around freedom. So,
and forgiveness.
And I mean, not freedom. Well, yes, freedom and forgiveness. That's right.
They go hand in hand.
They go hand. It was a Freudian slip in a good way.
It was perfect.
Okay, so thanks for that, Cliff. So, after it was done, we got to talk a little bit, and I wanted to ask you, who in your life do you need to forgive? Or how does forgiveness feel for you? Sometimes that word can be really heavy, and Cliff called it the F word last night, and I just went, oh gosh, that resonates with me. So I wondered how many of you it resonated with as well, and that's why I brought Cliff here, so we can talk all about forgiveness. So,
well, Sloane, it was a great event last night. I really appreciate you hosting us here at the Hive.
Thank you for coming.
It's a gorgeous space, and it was so comfortable having people here talking and being able to interact so closely with everyone. So thank you.
Yes, it was great to have you.
And it's also perfect that you didn't say the word forgiveness 2 or 3 times.
Right.
Because, as we talked about in the book signing, the word forgiveness has a lot of charge on it for a lot of people.
Yeah.
There are a lot of misconceptions about the word forgiveness and what forgiveness means, and there's also just charge because of past experiences with forgiveness and maybe some programming that was picked up early in life about forgiveness. A lot of people think forgiveness is just this religious thing. It's all about the church or pleasing God or something like that. And if you're not religious or not spiritual, then maybe it doesn't really appeal to you. You don't think that relates. And then a lot of people, as I mentioned, have misconceptions about what forgiveness is, why you should forgive, and even how to forgive. And we notice that a lot of people say that they've forgiven. There seems to be an expectation that you have to forgive after somebody does something, especially if it's somebody in a family or someone close to you. There's that expectation, okay, well, I forgive you, but you're still holding on.
Yeah.
You still have this little grudge or resentment or judgment about it. And so the purpose of writing this book was to dispel the misconceptions about forgiveness, to help people understand forgiveness, what it really is, the real purpose of forgiving, and the benefits of doing so. The benefits in one's personal life, the benefits for one's family, the benefit for one's community, and even, surprise, the benefit that forgiveness can have in business.
What's the biggest misconception? Because I know that there are a few, but what do you think is the biggest misconception that we have about forgiveness?
I think the biggest misconception is that you forgive for somebody else, for the benefit of somebody else. And actually, when we forgive, in order to forgive and get the benefit of forgiveness, you have to forgive with yourself in mind.
Yeah.
You forgive to create freedom for yourself. You forgive to let go of the old emotions, to get out of the mindset of being a victim,
Right.
and to be able to move forward in your life much more powerfully.
Cliff, can you tell me about, you told an amazing story last night, and I want to make sure that our viewers get to hear that, about your process in forgiveness and how you started your journey into this amazing book here.
Yeah, sure. It started with business, actually. I had worked in a transformational training company for a number of years, and we were doing great things. We were helping lots of people. We were putting on workshops all the time, running year-long training programs and 6-month training programs. And I worked with an author who was brilliant, but also as many really brilliant and creative people tends to be, very perfectionistic and always wanting the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And so as part of the team working to put all the curriculum and everything together, I was primarily responsible for the curriculum and writing that out and structuring it. We were very, very busy. We were always on to the next project. We'd barely get time to finish one under a deadline, and then it was on to the next one and the next one. And over a period of years, especially in the last probably 4 to 5 years of my tenure there, I built up a lot of stress, and I didn't really pay attention to it. I was paying more attention to the good things that we were doing, and to meeting the next deadline, and to getting the next project complete. And so what I realized at the end of one of the training programs, I realized that I was exhausted. And I also realized that I was carrying a lot of stress that I'd been pushing down. And even more than that, I recognized that I had a lot of things that I needed to deal with that were unresolved. Unresolved, like little grudges or resentments or angers or things that came up in the moment, but I pushed away and pushed behind me because we didn't really have time to deal with it. It didn't seem important. It was more important to get that next deadline met. And so I stepped back, I took a sabbatical at that point and stepped back and realized that I had some forgiveness work to do. And I began to do it, and I also took a couple of months just to relax. And shortly after that, I was diagnosed with lymphoma. And lymphoma is a form of cancer, and it's a cancer of the lymphatic system. When I was diagnosed, as I shared last night, I had the thought, well, that makes perfect sense. It's not that I wanted to be diagnosed with cancer, but if I had that diagnosis, it made sense that lymphoma is a disease of the immune system. The lymphatic system is related with the immune system, and that stress really debilitates the immune system. Stress has been shown in study after study, research project after research project, that it diminishes the effectiveness of the immune system. It reduces the body's ability to fight off disease and to get rid of cancerous cells, and it makes people so much more prone to cancers and heart disease and depression and all kinds of health and well-being issues. And so when I got that diagnosis, immediately after the initial, I also began to think in terms of, well, how am I going to use this? You know, what gift or what blessing am I going to get out of this cancer diagnosis?
Okay, I have to ask you, did you think that right away?
Right away.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I have to admit, I've been trained for many, many years,
right.
You know, in the work that we did in that transformational work. One of the key concepts was to always be looking for the gift or the value in something. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes.
Okay.
But that was something that came up almost immediately. Okay, how am I going to use this? Because I was damned if I was going to go through a cancer experience without getting some value out of it.
Right.
You know, I had the perspective that if something negative or something hurtful or something painful happens, I'm going to mine that sucker for everything it's worth.
Got it.
And so I'm going to get life learning, and I'm going to be able to not only benefit myself, but really the focus was how am I going to be able to use this in a larger way to contribute back to society, contribute to other people.
Awesome.
And I've had the opportunity to do that since going through the cancer diagnosis and going through chemotherapy. I've had clients, I've had a family member, I've had other friends who have been diagnosed with cancer and been freaked out.
Yeah.
Which is natural. You know, when you get a life-threatening diagnosis like that, the first thing you do is just feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And because of my experience, I've been able to help them gain a different perspective on it and to come to recognize that cancer, even though it's a life-threatening disease, really it's just another life experience. And you can choose to see yourself as a victim of it, and you can choose to see yourself as having to suffer through it, or you can choose to buck up and be fascinated by it, be interested in it. Wow, what can I learn from this? And what kind of people do I get to meet? And recognize that with modern technology, the medicine, you the alternative healing techniques that are available, everything that we have at our disposal, cancer is no longer a death sentence. And that there are more cancer survivors from initial diagnoses than there are people who die from initial diagnoses. I think, I may have just made that up.
But we'll go with that, because that's actually a good statistic.
Right,
Yeah.
and it certainly is an empowering statistic
Absolutely.
to think about. So part of my process, though, in healing the cancer was to take on the forgiveness in a really big way. And as I did my own process of forgiveness, I began to recognize that this was yet another way I could contribute back to others. And I could quantify and I could begin to recognize what the blocks, the obstacles were to forgiveness for most people, and then write about them.
Yeah.
And so this book came out of my endeavor to help people remove the obstacles to forgiveness and to be able to see and experience the ideas of forgiveness in a new way.
Okay, so when I heard you talking just now, what was coming up for me was, I've been blessed enough to work with a lot of women entrepreneurs that are either just getting started in their businesses or they're at a kind of a mid-level, getting ready to push through to the next one. And this theme has been coming up lately. I've been hearing it and feeling it a lot, and it's self-sabotage. So, and I just feel like there's something there between forgiveness and this self-sabotaging behavior. Can you speak to that?
Oh, absolutely. That is such a great question, and I'm sorry we didn't address that last night, actually. I love talking about this part of it. There's a couple of trainer friends of mine, Paul and Lane Cutright, and they have a saying that goes, "The guilty seek punishment."
Oh boy.
And that we've recognized for a long time that self-sabotage is a result of feeling bad about yourself, somehow feeling undeserving. When you're carrying guilt or shame, when you're carrying regret and remorse, when you feel like you've done something wrong and you haven't forgiven yourself for it, then you're carrying that guilt, and again, the guilty seek punishment. You'll find a way, most likely unconsciously, but you'll always find a way to sabotage yourself. If you don't feel really whole and healthy and deserving, if you don't feel in a place of being really clean, like you can get to with forgiveness, and if you don't feel self-loving, then you're always going to find a way to limit yourself. And so it may be you're just on the verge of having a breakthrough in your business, and then you blow some money somewhere, or you allow yourself to get conned, or you get into a personal thing that totally distracts your attention from the business, and then you lose focus and everything falls apart. There will always be a way to self-sabotage until you forgive yourself. And let's come back to that key concept, that key misconception. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself first.
Okay.
And it's about self-forgiveness. It's about gaining the benefits of letting go of all of the stuff that you're dragging around, the guilt, the shame, letting go of the burden of anger or resentment or grudges towards other people so that you can be free.
Okay, so give us one, what I call them Jedi mind tricks, and this might not be appropriate, but there is this big misconception. How do we forgive for ourselves? Like what should our mind be thinking, or how do we get into that place of read the book, right?
Right.
And then, but how do we get into that place of knowing that I need to forgive first for the health of me? Like, how do we start? Okay, so example, I've gone into an argument with someone, and it's blown up into something just ridiculous, like an avalanche, right? And it's to a point where forgiveness needs to happen. How do we go about that, I guess? What's the...
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you have the mindset?
Yeah.
Okay, well tell me, how do you feel when you're carrying one of those things with you?
Junk.
You feel like junk?
Yes.
Do you have energy?
No.
Do you feel motivated and inspired?
No.
Do you have a lot of creativity and new ideas coming to you?
No, it's like that's all you can think about is this argument or this fight or whatever the issue is. It's just like,
It's absorbing.
Yes.
It's a mind absorber.
Yes.
So you have to recognize that. You have to recognize the cost
Okay.
of not forgiving,
Okay.
the cost to yourself. You also have to, and I'm going to quickly address some of the other misconceptions here because I
Okay.
think that's part of the package
Okay.
of what you're asking
Yeah.
about here.
Yeah.
One of the other misconceptions about forgiveness is that, well, if I forgive that so-and-so, I'm making it okay that they hurt me
Right.
or they took advantage
That's a
of me.
big one.
That's a really big
It's
one.
huge.
Yeah, because nobody wants to make it okay that you got hurt because
No.
then you'll look like a pushover.
Yeah.
You know, people are going to take advantage of
Yeah.
me. If I forgive them, then other people are going to take advantage of me.
Or, you know, sorry, I don't mean to, I just wanted to say, you know, being that I work with a lot of women are coming, you know, into, and we work on business, but all this other stuff comes up as well.
Of course, yeah.
And there's a lot of abuse or a lot of horrible things that have happened in their lives. And I don't want to generalize if it only happens with women, but for the most part, that's who I work with. And then there's this concept of forgiveness that needs to be introduced, but then going back to that misconception of if I forgive, then it's okay.
I've made it okay that they did that.
Right.
The other part of that is if I forgive, it means I have to go back to the way things were with that person.
Right.
And that's not true. Neither one of those are true. When you forgive...
Yay, that's not
Yeah.
true. That's like, there should be a party about that. Just that misconception. We don't have to go back to the way it was.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to go back. In fact, you shouldn't go back to the way it was.
Right.
One of the benefits of forgiving is it allows you to get more clear in your mind and your heart so that you can see what was actually going on. And I may be jumping ahead a little bit and I'll come back
Okay.
to this. In order to really forgive, you have to be willing to take responsibility too. You have to be responsible for your part in getting into the situation that allowed that, whether it's abuse or betrayal or whatever else, you contributed to it. You know, each one of us is responsible for the choices and the actions we take and the conversations we have. We're responsible for putting ourselves in those situations that allowed the abuse or betrayal or the hurt to occur. And so once you take responsibility for that and you forgive, then you can begin to see the situation in a new way.
Yeah.
And you can begin to understand where you might need to set a different boundary, where you might need to change your way of being, or you might even need to just pull yourself away because you recognize that that's not a healthy person to have in your life.
Right.
So forgiving does not mean that you go back to the way things were. Forgiving means that you give yourself the space and the freedom, the emotional separation from that event or that circumstance to be able to see what you need to do to be self-loving, to really take care of yourself in that situation.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit more nurturing, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah. Okay, so last night, and I want to share this with our viewers, I asked, and I'm just going to call myself out. So, there's no sense in trying to make pretend it's somebody else.
I mean, it wasn't.
So, no.
Okay.
So, I find myself in these two situations. One in which I feel like I'm ready, I have forgiven. I know, I can feel it in my body, that situation, that event is, for me, healed. But when it comes up, or the conversation around that happens again, which it tends to, there's this other talk from other people. Oh, you shouldn't, I wouldn't let that go, and if it were me, I would have da-da-da-da, right? So there's that situation.
Right.
And then I find myself in kind of a polar opposite forgiveness roadblock, where I'm like, I totally forgave that. I am so over it. But then when the conversation comes up, I'm like, well, da-da-da-da-da-da, and I can hear myself and I can feel my body and the heat inside comes up again, and I'll be like, but I'm totally over it. So, help! How do I move through those forgiveness blockages, or how do we? Because I know I'm not the only one.
Oh, I think you're the only one.
No.
Of course you're not the only one. That's such a natural human reaction. And again, it comes back to one of the misconceptions about what forgiveness is. And I think this is a really great time for me to talk about how forgiveness can really come into a business setting in a little bit more effective way as well. So my perspective on forgiveness is that forgiveness is related to the negative judgments we have. Okay, remember last night I used that pushpin analogy.
Please tell us again.
Okay, so think about one of those bulletin boards, the cork boards, and they've got push pins in them, and there's some of the push pins that have one or two things, and there's some of the push pins that have a whole stack of stuff underneath the push pin. So the push pin is like a negative judgment, and the bulletin board is you, and that stack of things underneath the push pin is like the negative emotions and the limiting beliefs or the self-sabotaging behaviors or the misconceptions, whatever it is, all that stuff that goes along that's attached to that event that you're carrying around with you, you're dragging around with you. So the idea of forgiveness is to take that negative judgment and change it to a neutral or preferably a positive. So when you shift that negative judgment from a negative to a positive and you remove that push pin from the bulletin board, what happens? What happens, Sloane?
Everything drops.
Everything falls away.
Yeah.
Because it's the negative judgment. He shouldn't have done that.
Right.
Or that was wrong, or it was bad, or it shouldn't be that way. It's the negative judgment that keeps everything in place. And so the trick to forgiving, and this is going to address your next question as well, the trick to forgiving is being able to find some value, like I was talking about earlier with my cancer experience. Find some value, some benefit, some way that I've learned or grown, something that it added to me. Because when I can find some value out of the circumstance or situation, then all of a sudden, that negative judgment, it shouldn't have been like that, that was bad, it can shift at least to a neutral. Okay, well, it was what it was, and I gained and I moved on. Or preferably, it shifts to a positive, and you can look back. Like I look back on the experience of leading up to my sabbatical and cancer diagnosis, all of that high stress environment and all of that stuff. Again, I put myself there. I was there by choice, and I learned a lot, and I wouldn't give up any of that for the world. But I can look back and say, wow, thank God that happened, because as a result of this cancer, as a result of that environment, I wrote a book. I'm able to contribute to people in so many different ways. It has really added value to my life. And I'm going to guarantee that you can look at almost any situation, any hurt from the past, any betrayal, even abuse. I hate to say that, we're not condoning abuse, but even those circumstances, and you can look and find some way in which you're able to extract value from that. All right, so let me go back to the question. So the first part of your question was, well, I'll answer the second part first. You get into that situation, you still have these judgments. Well, if you still have a judgment, it means you haven't forgiven. So it means you have an opportunity to go back and to look at that and find some way in which it has provided some benefit to you.
That makes so much sense.
And then once you find that benefit, then you can at least let go of the negative judgment and let it be okay that that's the way that it was. And again, preferably be able to say, wow, I'm really grateful for that. That actually added to me. The second thing, so when your friends start there now, which is so common, right?
Yes.
Friends think they're being helpful. Oh, here, let me help you hold on to that grudge. Let me help you be gossipy and mean about that person. But you can just say, you know what? Stop. I got value from that circumstance. I have forgiven. I learned. I've grown as a person as a result of that. I am not going there. That is something that I choose to take with me, and I am going to not forgive and forget, but I'm going to forgive and remember in a completely new way.
Forgive and remember in a completely new way. That's beautiful.
And so in business settings, if you think about the negative judgment as being the point of forgiveness, and in a business setting, think about what it's like when you're holding on to some grudge or resentment against a collaborator or a client or a business partner. It makes it difficult in some ways to work with them. You've got maybe your defense is up with that person and you can't be completely authentic and honest with them, or you're thinking more about that thing that they did than you are about the project at hand. It gets in the way of your ability to really be creative and to be productive together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so to be able to be really productive and work with people effectively in a business environment, you've got to be able to be clean. You've got to be able to get rid of those negative judgments. And you've got to be able to communicate effectively and neutrally, and the tools that we talk about in the Forgiveness Handbook and that I'll be sharing in the workshop this weekend can help you do that.
Yes.
Yay.
So just to recap, this was like full of so much information. We talked about forgiving and changing our negative judgments, letting all that stuff, pulling the push pin out, letting all that go. We have talked about really changing our mindset to look at these opportunities, and instead of going straight to the
being the victim,
right, looking for opportunities for value.
And being empowered.
And being empowered.
That's an empowered mindset. It's like, I am in charge of my life, and I am not going to tell a disempowering, victimized story to myself any longer.
Exactly. And my favorite is that we do this for ourselves. We forgive for us.
Other people may benefit as a result.
Right.
And they will inevitably, but the first reason to forgive is for yourself. Yay.
Okay, thank you so much for doing this today. I know that you're really busy here on your book tour, so I'm very grateful, and we are very grateful for you to be here and to share this message and to have the courage to write this book. And if you had one more thing to say to everyone, and before you do that, I just want to say that Cliff is doing a one-day workshop here in Honolulu at the YWCA of Oahu in Fuller Hall on Saturday. So this coming Saturday, if you look down below here, there'll be a link so that you can sign up and get your tickets. I don't know, I can't foresee the future, but I definitely think you should get your tickets because I don't know how many seats will be left. It is only a few days away. So the link's down here. Go ahead and get your tickets, and he's going to be doing a full day workshop. It's going to go into the steps of really forgiving, and he's going to take us on this journey, which usually it's you have a full 10...
I have a 10-week coaching relationship that I generally
program.
do this in.
Exactly. So we're really lucky that we're going to be able to have you here for a full day. I'm really excited for Saturday. And then also, before I forget, because I tend to do that, I get excited about our last thing, where can people purchase the Forgiveness Handbook?
Well, you can go to theforgivenesshandbook.com.
Got it.
And there's a link to the Amazon page there. You can get it in Kindle version, you can get it in print version just like this. There's a companion workbook that goes with it, because at the end of every chapter of the book there are a series of exercises.
Awesome.
And when you read the book and do the exercises, you go through the entire process.
Love that. I love that.
One thing I want to share about the workshop, and please come to the workshop. It's not just about forgiveness, it's really a workshop about emotional education. It's about learning how to think about yourself and others in different ways, in more empowered ways. It's about learning to stand in your creativity, to be more self-expressed, to get the freedom of mind and heart that will allow you to be successful in your business, and probably more importantly, successful in your own relationships. You know, one of the things that I've been talking about here, especially on the islands, is that there's so many people holding on to little grudges and resentments, and not just for themselves, but passing them down to their children, and passing them down to generations, and that families get split apart. And that Apis and her husband were saying this the other night, that oftentimes people will show up for a funeral, but they won't come to a birthday party. You know, they pay respects in death, but why not enjoy your family and your friends in life? So do this now. This is the time to do it. This is the time to start taking action in forgiveness. If you're carrying around any burden, if you're carrying around any heaviness of heart, if there are people in your lives that you don't want to see, or you try to avoid being around, you know you've got something to forgive. If you're experiencing self-sabotage, if you're experiencing difficulty in getting clear on what your vision, your desires are, it's likely because you're carrying around a bunch of stuff from the past. The way to get free of the past and move into the future powerfully is to forgive and gain freedom of the mind and heart.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm ready to forgive. So, and I hope that everybody else is too. Join the forgiveness movement and go ahead and get Cliff's book, the Forgiveness Handbook. The links are below, and we'll make sure that you guys have everything you need to start forgiving today. Thank you. See you again.
Thank you, Sloane.
Thanks. Good.
All right.